Well, this is a completely spontaneous idea to talk about sensitivity, about radical sensitivity on the path, because I think there are a lot of sensitive people who end up on the spiritual path, and I think there's almost a secret hope in spirituality, in the awakening journey, on the non-dual sort of path, that in a way somehow, waking up from the dream, realizing the nature of union or consciousness, somehow is going to solve the problem of sensitivity. And in my own experience, and it is only in my experience, of course, the opposite has been the case. That's not to put a damper on it, or or say anything negative, but I've always been a very sensitive person. I was when I was a child, and in my youth, and yada yada, growing up as a teenager, and that sensitivity in some way has been, certainly as I lived my life in the 20s and 30s in a state of craziness and confusion and dysfunction and addiction and dysregulation on all many different levels, was that this radical sensitivity of the self was actually really pretty bad. It was a big obstacle, I felt, although I didn't really know what was going on, so it's hard to say. But in retrospect, I would say that it felt like that I couldn't deal with my own feelings about who I was, or about who other people were, or about emotions, or about relationships, or just the whole damn edifice of feeling sensitive in the world. I was anxious, I was nervous, I still wanted to be someone. I wanted to be not pop star, but a musician. I was a guitarist and the front man of a band for a while, and I just couldn't handle it. I was too sensitive and too filled with anxiety, about everything like that, and I didn't get on the spiritual path to solve that problem. The spiritual path found me, I didn't find it. And, but after the last, 25 years, I would say, of falling through and dissolving, and, the many veils of self, of illusion, delusion, and solving a lot of my own personal problems through all of the, cathartic methods that I've talked about. I mean, lots and lots. And of course, solving the issue of buried toxins and antagonists, and all of the residue of drugs in the body, and healing, being on a real physical healing journey as well as an emotional healing journey. And then, of course, deep spiritual exploration. By and by, as the layers, if you like, have been stripped away more and more and more and more, until there's, a rootedness in a certain silence, I would say, in a certain equanimity. But the one thing that it hasn't eradicated, if you like, is my sensitivity. And in fact, I don't know, has it increased my sensitivity? I mean, as life moves through us and we age, things happen anyway, so nothing is fixed. The world has changed as well since I was a kid or a youngster. You know, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't any of this stuff. There wasn't any of this talking to each other through cameras in this way. There wasn't any real field, and the world itself wasn't quite so insane as it is now. You know, and life wasn't almost quite as unstable, maybe unstable, as it is now. But the one thing I can say is that my sensitivity is radical, I would say. But the difference here is that I don't make any attempt to fight it, really to interpret it, to suppress it, to fix it, to resolve it, to argue with it, to explain it away, to act on it. Sometimes that might be necessary. But you see what I mean? What I'm talking about here is that as I've fallen deeper in, I realised that my own sensitivity is not a problem. It's not a problem to be solved. It's actually a divine gift given to me by, natural intelligence, God or whatever. It's part of the package of Kavi, and I need to honour that sensitivity and stop fighting it, and stop interpreting it so much as though, well, I'm really sensitive, therefore I'm this kind of person, or I need to do this with it in order to protect myself. My level of kind of protection is not rooted in trying to protect my sensitivity from anything. It's sort of innate in a way. The wiser I've become, or the deeper, or the older, or the more mature, the less there is any need for an idea of protection of myself, because what's really to protect? And that's not a glib or a throwaway statement. It's just the kind of truth of things. I feel rooted and grounded enough in presence and a kind of groundedness that the protection is self-evident. I feel harmonious enough within myself, holistic enough within myself. But I'm still incredibly sensitive. And so, what I think what I'm trying to speak to is that you might be sensitive. You might be a sensitive person. There are a lot of people on the path of life who are sensitive. It's just, in a way, that sensitivity is almost kind of unwelcome in the sort of mainstream view of, or the mainstream society, the whole way it kind of moves and is kind of structured. So the sensitive can end up feeling like they're a problem. The outsider, the one who suffers extreme sensitivity. You see this in schools. The schoolyard is full of that kind of constellation, in a way, where the sensitives are marginalized and often bullied, for God's sake. This kind of hierarchy where the sensitive is cast out and so feels that they're a problem, and they've got this problem that becomes the very something to bear all throughout life. And that's such a facile way for us to run these societies, because often the sensitive is the wisest. The sensitive one, should be maybe, honoured in a true village society. The sensitive might be the shaman on the outside of the village, or the one who can feel something coming, or the one who can I don't know, read the energy of a situation, read the energy of other people, keep an eye out for kind of trouble coming, or just a depth of feeling that would be honoured in some kind of way. But we don't live in that sort of world, and so it tends to be that the sensitive is somehow, the cast out. You've got it wrong somehow. You're too sensitive. You shouldn't be that sensitive. It's a problem. Yada yada, and that doesn't really work. And it makes for a lot of unhappiness. And so what I'm saying to you, and I'm encouraging, everybody in a way who's watching this video and thinking about their own sensitivity, is, don't fight it. It's a gift. Neither extrapolate too much about yourself from it. In many ways, it doesn't really mean anything. Everybody's got their own way, but the deeper you go on the journey of spiritual, traveling or deepening, and the more the layers, the blockages, the veils, all of this kind of stuff that it starts dissolving, the more you deepen on the path, then it only reveals, the depth of your true sensitivity. And once you stop fighting it, even though it hurts, it's like raw. Sometimes rawness is actually a good quality, in my estimation, in my opinion, if you like. So go with it. Realize it as a gift given by God. If you weren't given it, it's there. It's yours. Own it. I hope that speaks to you. Bye-bye.